Testing. Perfect. Well, it's good to see everybody here tonight. It's really good to be back home for a couple days, and God's blessed me with the opportunity to be back and to spend some time with my family and also with my church family. So it's been really a blessing and an honor to be back. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on, just a few aspects of the culture and how God is kind of using me and my team and some of the things that have happened there. I think I'm going to start with once I got there. We went alongside, as soon as we got there, we were working alongside James and Andrea, who were two established missionaries there, and their family is there. And so they have two kids, or three kids. One's name is Gideon, the other is Claire and Lydia. And it's been a blessing to get to know them, and they've been a real encouragement. They've been there for about 3 years, so they've been doing that they've been there for a little while. And we're in a kind of I would like to call it a village. It's not really a village, it's kind of a city. And it's a very small little city or village, and that's kind of where we're located in Berat, Albania. And it's different. It's different. Of course, in Tirana, which is the capital of Albania, it feels a little bit more like Europe, I would say. Some of those cities in Europe are kind of similar. They kind of remind me of each other. They're all very similar. And then once you get out into the more desolate places, you kind of get a little bit more of a glimpse into the culture. So that's where we're working in Berat, and we're working at the Berat Church of Christ, the Kisha Ikristit, which is Berat Church of Christ. And so it's been a great work. Most of the people there at that church are the more elderly folk. We got some younger folks coming in too. And that's really where we're kind of working, is we're trying to bring in the younger kids and the younger generation of Berat. There are some younger kids that we've been able to reach out to and get them to come to the church. And one of the things that I'm really excited about with me and Daniel, we were just playing football, where they call it football, but it's actually soccer. And so we were playing soccer, and all of a sudden these group of kids just came up to us and started playing football with us and asked us, what we do and kind of, why we're there. And so hopefully we'll have an opportunity to invite them to the church as well and get that youth group stronger there. But yeah, James and Andrea have called us to that place to work alongside them and to really break in to the younger folks. And we've also had opportunities to go outside of just Berat. We've gone to Durrës, which is another city. It's right alongside the Adriatic Sea, right on the Adriatic. And we were able to stay there at a camp in refugee tents. So that was a bit interesting. We stayed in tents for about 2 weeks. And we did a lot of classes, and we taught a lot of material and got to know those kids. And that's really kind of when this is an interesting thing, because God uses your struggles to really reach out and to people and to show them that people care about them, and they become interested. So as we were struggling with culture shock and getting used to people, it was really about that camp a few months in, and God started bringing people to us, and He started to really show us that we were needed and that we were valuable, and people really started to come up to us. And I was able to share word with a little girl there, and she came up to me and said, what is it about the Bible that you like so much? And I was able to explain to her a little bit about, I think that the Bible's awesome. And she said, what book do you recommend me to read? Because she had her own Bible. And I told her, since the camp week was about Jonah, I told her to read the book of Jonah. And she read the whole book in about a day, and then came back to me and said it was a great book, but it ended kind of strange. And so that told me that she actually read it. And so, us being there has kind of put like a light there, and people are coming up to us and asking us questions, and so just our presence there, God has really blessed others, and it's been a blessing and encouragement to us as well. So yeah, we were on the Adriatic Sea. We were able to do some ministry there. We had a lot of baptisms there, and it was really awesome. Some of the classes that we were able to teach. We had a football tournament, a soccer tournament, and we had a basketball tournament. We were able to teach some lessons for that. And so that was our time at the Adriatic. I'm not going to go too much into detail because I could be here all night talking about. And yes, there was also, some of you probably know about there was a massive wildfire that took place in Durrës, and God protected us. The mountains, which of course in Albania it's all just mountains. It's the mountain country, and so that's in the mountains. It's so dry at that time that we were at the camp, and a fire just sprung up, and it got to a point where all the mountains around us were on fire, and the only route out was through the fires and through the mountains. And so we were just stuck at the camp, and we were praying to God that the fires wouldn't make it to us. And the firemen were working during the day, but at night we were kind of left on your own. So until the firemen could get back on it. So it was definitely interesting, to say the least, and God brought us through that. And so you never know what to expect. That's for sure. So, but that was our time in Durrës and at that camp, and from there we were able to start on classes, and this was awesome because we have a lot of opportunities. We're kind of, many of you probably heard of the AIM program. It's the program that I'm going through, where you go to the school. It's called Sunset, this church in Lubbock, and they have a school there where they train you up to be a missionary. And one of the things the reason that Albania was selected by this program is because the missionaries are there, and they really need some help to start up new projects and new things. And so we've had a lot of opportunities to start Bible studies. We were able to start a Mark study and invite the youth that way. And we started out with 3 or 4 kids, and then eventually the next day it was 5 kids, and then the next day it was 6, 7, and then 10, and then 13, 14, 15 throughout that Mark study. And then that Mark study was to prepare them for this Bible Bowl that was coming up. And so they are really interested and hungry for the Word. They love to read the Bible. They love to read the Word. Here, it can be different. There's so many distractions, so many things to distract us. But over there, there's not. They don't have as much. They live a more simple life. They live with their grandparents. It's very family oriented, and they work with their family's business. And they don't have much. And as kids, they might have a football or a soccer ball. That they have a sports team that they like to watch, and there's really just not a lot there. And so they love to read the Word. They love to learn about it. They really get invested in it, and there's not as many distractions in that way. So that's something that I really admire about that culture. But they're really hungry for the Word and really hungry for the gospel. And so they'll come up and they'll go to the class. They'll see a flyer, and so we'll pass out flyers around the cities and hang those up, and then they'll read those flyers and they'll go. And a lot of times you can even get the parents to go as well. So by the end of it, we have 14, 15 kids and a lot of the parents in there as well. And so it was a real big blessing. And so I've seen that we're able to start a lot of ministry opportunities. We did that. We then went to Durrës again. We went to the Bible Bowl. We did that. We did the Bible Bowl in Albanian after we had learned the language for some time. We did not do well, because it's very difficult to translate into Albanian and do the questions, which were very difficult questions. But we did that. We helped the kids do it as well, and that was a big blessing for us, and it was a blessing for them too. And I could see the spark that they had for the Word and for ministry, and so that's pretty amazing. And as I kind of talk about the Word and how planting a seed in their heart, one of the struggles in that is Islam. So the religion in Albania, one of the major religions, is Islam, and Islam is it's a very big thing over on that side of Europe. Of course, you got Turkey, and you got some of those Middle Eastern countries up past Turkey, and it's a very, the Ottoman Empire, which was the Turks. They actually owned Albania, and so they spread the Muslim religion throughout it. And so a lot of those families there are very rooted in Islam. And it's interesting because some of them, or most of them, don't practice Islam, but because they're so rooted in that, and that's their family values, they say that they're Islam, even though they don't often practice it. And so that can scare you. Oh, they're Islamic, but they're really interested in what Christianity has to say. That being said, when they do the kids decide, I'm going to give my life over to Christ, that causes a lot of tension between the family, because it's, we've been Islamic this whole time, and we believe in Allah. And so once they decide we're going to convert, a lot of times that comes with a lot of problems, and sometimes even the children can be kicked out of their houses, and sometimes even disowned by their family if they're serious practicing Muslims. And so that's been a big challenge. That I would say that's one of the bigger challenges, is working around Islam and learning about the Quran and what it says, and some of the issues with the Quran and how to deal with those things respectfully. But yes, they are very, very receptive to the word, and so that's a big blessing. So from there, after doing the Bible Bowl at Honduras, we go, and there's just so many things we've done in such a short time, only 5 months. Poland was a trip that we were able to take, and it was very encouraging. And we flew into Krakow, Poland. That's a pretty big city in Poland. And then from there, we took a train to Wrocław, Poland. And we had a conference, and we were able to see, it's the European Visions Workshop. And so we were able to see a lot of the things that are going on in Europe and a lot of the ministries that were going on there. And it was a very, very good trip, very encouraging for us. And man, some of the speakers there were awesome. There was a lot of Ukrainian ministers that are ministers in Ukraine, even some Ukrainian soldiers that were there that were talking about what's going on there. We had, conversations and talks about how to get the gospel into Iran. And there was, ministers from England that talked to a preacher from London, Ghana. There was just so many different missionaries. And it really just shows you, when they're coming in and talking about their stories and their hardships, you really begin to see, the vision in Europe and around the world, beyond just our doorstep. And we get to see, the struggles that are going on over there, and how God's people are trying to push back against the struggles of today in that side of the world. And it was just a huge encouragement. And we learned how to put material together and classes together, and how to combat, different, I believe in this religion, or I believe this, and how do we bring the gospel into that. And so Poland was awesome. I think that was a great conference, as well as Poland's a beautiful, beautiful city, full of old churches and cathedrals, castles. Poland was very, very beautiful. And so we went to Poland, and we did that. And we've also had a lot of abilities to invite kids over to our house and play games and do those kinds of things. It's a lot easier to just go up and talk to people. I think in America we've lost the ability to communicate with each other. You go to a coffee shop and you just, you talk to people. It's more of a social gathering, whereas here in America, it's not that you can't talk to people, it's not done as much, and it's not as frequent. So just going up to people and talking about what you do and who you are. And I think that's been a big blessing in my life, is becoming confident in talking and communicating about my faith to other people, and sometimes even strangers. And so that's been a huge blessing, just going up to a vegetable market. And I remember talking to this guy. His name slips my mind, but he started talking to me about the church, and he said, "Are you a missionary here?" Because he knew that I lived here. And I said, "Yes." And he asked me, "What what branch of religion? I said, I'm part of the Church of Christ. And we had a conversation about what that was and who Christ is. And he says, my family is Islamic, but he says, I respect all religions, and I really respect the fact that you come from America to live in Albania. And he said that's very encouraging. And so people there are just super, super receptive, and they love to talk and to learn more about you. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are going to be happening in the future. We're going to be going, one of the things that is coming up as soon as we get back, I believe, is we're going to be going to Germany, and we're going to be buying a church van for the youth group. We're going to be driving it all the way through Germany, through Italy, and getting onto a ferry and taking that back to Albania. And so me and the other guy that's with me, Daniel's going to be helping with that. We're also going to Slovakia in November on the border of Ukraine, and we're going to be working with Ukrainian refugees. We're going to be working with some of the trauma victims from the war that's been going on there, and we're going to be able to see some of the ministries that are going on there as well, and we're going to be able to make connections because I've learned that going around to different places, we've been able to make connections with people in London who are wanting to come to Albania and teach classes there. There's been opportunities for us to go to London and to teach class. And so that's been a huge blessing. So hopefully when we go to Slovakia, we'll be able to see, the ministry that's going on with Ukraine and the efforts to kind of relieve some of the trauma and the pain from the war. And hopefully I know God's going to teach us a lot of things. And hopefully we'll be able to make some connections and bring those connections back to Albania. I also want to talk a little bit about the culture, the cultural aspect of things, just to give you an idea about Albania a little bit. Albania is kind of this mixture between Middle East and the Middle East and Europe. It feels like a little bit like Russia mixed with the Middle East is the way people describe it to me often. They're a people of hardship. They've gone through a lot of hardships, many times through starvation and communism. This kind of leads me into Enver Hoxha. And I'm not going to talk a ton about this because, again, I could be here all night. But Enver Hoxha was a very corrupt leader. And Albania, for a long time, was known as the North Korea of Europe. They were completely closed off. And this guy, Enver Hoxha, who was the communist leader, was paranoid. And he was so paranoid that somebody was going to take his position that he ended up killing off his family. And the people that were closest to him, he would kill because he was afraid that they would take that position from him. He closed Albania off from the rest of the world. You couldn't leave state to state or province to province in Albania. If you did, you were shot. They couldn't leave the country, obviously. They were shot. They could only eat certain foods that the government sanctioned. Most of the crops that they grew would go to Enver and to the Communist Party of Albania. And so eventually what happened with that is that the people of Albania overthrew Enver Hoxha and the Communist Party in Albania. And that's when they began to become free and to have a little bit of freedom from that. And James, our coordinator in Albania, the one that's kind of leading us and showing us how to do this, he was a missionary in Ukraine, and he said something that's kind of always stuck with me. He said you can give up as much freedom as you want, but he said you can't take it back without blood. And so the people had to fight for that freedom. And a guy that I work with, his name is Bledi, and he talks about his brother who had to jump into the ocean and try to swim to the Greek island of Corfu and to get away from what was going on. And he drowned. And it just lets you know that we are really blessed, with all the things that we have. And so that's a little bit about Albania. The guys, not just the older guys, but also the older folks there, they're all, you'll notice if you ever go, you would see that they're shorter. And the reason that they're shorter is because when they were kids, they were malnourished. They weren't fed well. there was not enough food, so they were going through this time of starvation. And so a lot of the way that they live is they save everything. Nothing goes to waste. Absolutely nothing. If there's any food left, it's going to be stored. They're going to save it for later. They grow their own crops. They're very self-sustained because they don't have a lot of trust for the government, of course. And so it's definitely different than America in a lot of ways. It's another thing too is it's different. The way that they greet each other is different. When you go up to greet somebody, you hug across. So you usually hug from side to side this way. And I don't know, maybe me hugging some of you, I might have gone the wrong way, and it takes some time to get used to, but that's the way that they greet each other. They also greet each other with the kiss of friendship. So you kiss one side, and then you kiss the other side. You kiss both cheeks when you meet someone new, and when you greet friends. And so that's the way they greet each other. They dress very formally. A lot of times they wear suit coats around. They wear dress shirts. They have fedora hats. They dress very differently. There's a lot of the food is another aspect that I kind of want to touch on just a little bit. The food is very a Mediterranean. So a lot of fish, a lot of Greek food, moussaka, which I don't know if any of you know what that is, but it's this casserole-like dish. Kind of like lasagna, and they grow their own vegetables. There's more vegetables in Albania than many other places. They grow almost everything. If you can think of a vegetable or a fruit, it pretty much grows there. So a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruit, and a lot of casseroles, pastas, meat, goat meat. There's a lot of goat meat, lamb meat, beef, of course. There's this traditional dish where they take a goat head and they bake the goat head, or the sheep head, they take it and they bake it, and they take it out and they serve it on a plate, and you actually pick the skull open, and from there they pick the brains out and eat the brains. So I haven't had the opportunity, and I'm kind of thankful that I haven't had the opportunity to eat that yet. So
I take it there's no McDonald's.
There is no McDonald's in Albania, which is strange because there's other fast food restaurants. But there is no McDonald's, which is kind of a stumper to me, how there was no McDonald's, but there's all kinds, and I mean, everywhere in the world seems like there's a McDonald's. So that's a little bit of a brief overview of kind of the culture and some of the work that we're doing. And of course, there is more to come. There's more things that are going to happen. I know eventually we're going to do a conference in Athens as well. I forgot to mention that's coming up as well. And I know that we're going to be starting another study once we get back. And that's going to be exciting. Also some preaching opportunities as we learn the language, maybe even be able to do some translation and maybe speak in the language a bit, do some classes that way. So at this point, I kind of want to open it up to questions. If there's any questions that you guys might have, that would be much appreciated.
So the sunset, like all these different places y'all are going, the sunset schedule out, or the people where you are, put all that together where y'all are going, phone or how to check that place?
So that is not actually Sunset that does that. That's our coordinator. That is, so once you kind of get through the AIM program, right, there's a lot of guidance there. There's a lot of, maturing that goes on. They try to teach you how to manage time, things like that. And then it's just a little bit of a more strict schedule. And then once you get through the AIM program and you learn, just studying the Bible, then you're passed on to the AIM coordinators, and that from there are the coordinators, which are the missionaries that are there. It is their responsibility to plan and to coordinate what's going to be happening. So like the Poland trip, Athens, all of those trips, the ministries that are going on, all of that is scheduled by James and Andrea, who are our coordinators in Albania, who are the established missionaries there.
Did you get Whataburger when you came back to the States?
Not yet. I'm hoping to. Yes, I've got to have Whataburger. The first thing I wanted when I got off the plane was a McDonald's burger and a Dr. Pepper. I had to get those two things. So, yes.
What's the main language called?
So, other countries call it Albanian, right? And this is a kind of a double-sided question because Albania, the country Albania, is actually not called Albanian to the Albanians. It's Shqipëri, or Shqipëria, which is the country of the beak, which it's the country of the eagle. And so that is kind of a traditional thing. Of course, the two-sided eagle, one head of the eagle points down to the valley and to the beaches. The hotter side of Albania, the other one points to the mountains. And so kind of getting to your question, with the language, it's not actually called Albanian, it's called sheep, which is also kind of the language of the beak. And that is the language that they speak. As Americans, you would call it Albanian.
Can you say anything in the language?
That was my next question. How do you say Jesus Christ in that?
Jesus Christ. They say a lot like Spanish, so a lot of times I hear Jesus, Jesus Christi. The church would be called Kisha, the Church of Christ. Kisha e Christit is the Church of Christ. So Jesus is pronounced differently. I hear it pronounced differently. For like saying hello, it's quite a long word. Përshëndetje is hello. How are you is sieni. One of the most important words is mir, which means good. And so if somebody asks you, how you're doing, it's a very cultural thing, like how are you? And it's considered rude to say, I'm not doing so well. Shum catch would be very bad. That would be a very rude thing to say. So it's actually, culturally, you would say mir. So sieni is how are you, and mir is what you would say back, and that's what you hear constantly in the streets, which it's frustrating to me because sometimes I want to ask people how they're doing genuinely, and when you say sieni, they will always say mir, and so I'm trying to figure out how are you doing really, like how are you actually doing right now, and so that's something that we're trying to figure out. It's a bit of a frustration. So, yes, and that's not nailed down by scholars as of right now, but it's speculated that the Garden of Eden would have been somewhere in Albania and possibly in the Berat region. This kind of gets into geography. The Berat is a region of Albania. There's the Berat city in the middle, and then you've got the region of Berat. It's also where they think, they do believe because of what it talks about in Genesis, and I'm not a scholar, but there's a passage, and Dad, do you know that the passage where the rivers, it talks about where the rivers meet? 4 rivers meeting, and it aligns perfectly within the Berat region. And they believe because of the vegetation and the way things grow there that it could have been where the Garden of Eden was. Also, they believe that the oldest olive tree in the world is somewhere in the Berat region, which, of course, Turkey always battles with that and always says Turkey has the oldest olive tree, and then Albania comes back and says, no, it's in Berat. So, but yes, also kind of getting onto that, it's a place that Paul would have frequently been. Albania is mentioned by Paul, but also the road going from Berat to Tirana, which is where, to get anywhere else around the world, you have to go to Tirana, right? There's only one airport in Albania. And it's interesting to mention that about 24 Albanias, I believe, 24 can fit in Texas. So Albania is quite small. It's a pretty small little country. But you have to go to Tirana, and Paul would have taken that road through he would have gone that direction. He would have gone through Tirana to get to Greece, to get to Rome. And so you have to go through Albania. That's one of the major roadways, so it's believed that he would have traveled that way. And the verse slips my mind. It's in Romans, Illyricum. It's the nation of Illyricum. And Paul talks about the privilege that he's had of being able to preach the gospel from Macedonia to Illyricum, which would have been the nation of Albania. And so, yes, there's a lot of biblical history regarding Albania.
You don't have many baptisms?
Baptisms? Yes, we do. We've had quite a few baptisms. Once we got there, it was like an explosion for the first week or so. There was a lot of the people of the church started getting baptized. And then from there, we went to camp. There was 4 or 5 baptisms at camp. And some of those, we weren't directly, we were kind of indirectly involved with it, with the relationship with them and showing up for it. And other times we directly studied with them. But yes, there's been multiple baptisms.
Is it done in the river or the ocean or what?
So, at the church, if there's going to be a baptism at the church, it's actually done in a tub. So it's an old, it's like this steel tub. We call it a Soviet-looking tub. There's some things that we just say, oh, that's just an old Soviet, like some of the doors and some of the appliances. So it's this just steel tub. Right, you'd take buckets and you'd fill it up, and we put this blue tarp in it, and that's where the baptisms are taking place, is in this tub. I say steel. It's more like a box, a metal box that the baptisms happen. There's this tarp that's in it, and so that's where we do it at the church. When we're at other places, in Durrës, we were baptizing them in the Ionian Sea. So that's where we were baptizing. The Ionian's a beautiful sea, so always warm and cold in certain spots. There's a river that ran through, and so we'd baptize in the river. We'd baptize in the Ionian, the Adriatic, which we haven't had any. I haven't been a part of any baptism in the Adriatic, but I know that there's baptisms that happen there as well. So. So we have an apartment there that we live in. We say it's an apartment. It's more of a house that we have the ability to stay in. And it's before I get into the fruit trees, I kind of want to talk about another cultural aspect. In Albania, the people there are very tight-knit, and they're very nosy. They're very, very nosy people. And we have some neighbors right across the way, and everything happens kind of outside. And so, the meetings that they have with their family happens outside. So those things are happening right there. Our windows have no curtains, and so you can just see directly in. Even the curtains, we do have curtains, but they have holes all in the curtains. So it's like a design, these Italian curtains that I want to get rid of, and you can just see right into the house. And so there's no real privacy. And there's multiple people that have our keys to our house, apparently, because we'll go inside and there'll be things switched around or changed. Sometimes people move our clothes inside for some reason, which I guess it's the old ladies next door trying to be helpful. Nobody steals anything because it's culturally shameful to steal. Now, that doesn't mean that can't happen, so we're trying to figure out how to keep people out of our house. But nothing's been stolen quite yet, and it's culturally shameful. You will actually be outcasted if you were to steal. So they usually, the Roma, the gypsies, which is another story, they're the people that would be, they're the ones that are kind of in poverty. And so a lot of times those would be the people that would be pickpocketing or stealing, but they will not steal from you if they know that you're local to that place. And so since we've been there, they don't ask us for money. They let us alone. Getting to the fruit trees from there, there's, like I said, there's a lot of fruit. It's a very, very fertile climate in Albania, especially in Berat. And so there's just fruit trees grow wild. So the weeds that they kill, right, the weeds that they complain about is actually mint. So wild green leaf mint, spearmint grows wild. In our backyard, we have a mandarin orange tree. We have a regular orange tree. We have a lemon tree. We have multiple olive trees. We have a pear tree, a fig tree. There's pomegranates growing through our fence. Grapes hanging over. We got grapes that grow. There's olives everywhere. So much so that usually when I'm walking around the streets, they don't trim those, and I end up hitting my head on an olive branch or walking through those. So those can get kind of annoying. But yes, there's fruit all in our backyard. So yes, it's a very interesting thing.
Do you like fruit?
I do now. I do now. Yes, the fruit there is a lot better than the fruit that you can get here. And so, eating a tomato here, that's just totally different than having a tomato there. The onions, they're so sweet that you could almost eat them like an apple. Although probably want to brush your teeth afterwards, but they're pretty good. So the onions are amazing. The salads there are real fresh. There's always salads that you get sauce cosi, which is this yogurt. But it's not fruit yogurt like you're thinking. It's this cream-like sauce. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like sour cream, and they put that on the salads, which took some time to get used to, but now I'm used to it, so it's pretty good. And then, of course, the vegetables are amazing. Olives are amazing.
Do you have any tips for someone trying to grow olives?
Do I have any tips for somebody trying to grow olives? Change the climate. Yeah, that's a good one. Move to the Mediterranean. I don't know that there's so many olive trees. It's kind of a nuisance sometimes. So, yeah, I don't move to Barat, and you can just throw a seed on the ground, and I'm sure it'll grow. So, yeah, man, those olive trees.
How highly do you recommend young people to go to the AIM program?
So the AIM program, that's a good question. That's a great question. The AIM program, and I don't like to be an ad for anything but Jesus, but the AIM program has been a huge blessing for me. God called me that direction, and I'm really glad He did. Because at first, I was wanting to go into a career, and God was calling me this way, and so I followed Him this way, and it's been an amazing thing. But I do definitely highly recommend the AIM program, because it's a place where when you go, you're challenged. It's kind of like a crucible, and so you're deeply challenged by the things that happen there, the different the classes that you'll go through. You'll learn how to present the gospel to atheists. You'll learn how to talk to people that are questioning their religion, from all the way down to how to prepare a sermon, how to teach a class. It's very practical. It's very applicational. There's a lot of theology that you go through as well, and I love the theology that they do because it's very practical. How the amazement of the wonder, the splendor of God. And there's a lot of great classes from instructors that have been doing it for a very long time. But it's not just classes. It's also a place where you live. You live in this place, and you grow spiritually with a group of kids and teenagers. Some of them were adults. Some of them were teenagers. As you grow together, and you're formed and assembled onto teams. And there's so many trips that we did. There's so many classes that we took. And really, it's a relationship that you form with the instructors. It's kind of like you live there with those instructors and with those people. And it's an incredible experience.
What age do you have to be to go?
So I believe that the max age is like 26. So you can be quite a bit older, 20, 25. Don't quote me on that, because that could be.
How old do you have to be to go?
You have to be 18. They do make exceptions to that. There's been some exceptions. They judge based on character, and so they won't like say, okay, because you're this age you can't go. But the most biggest exception I've seen for that's about 17. So you have to be usually around 18. But it is. The AIM program was awesome, and it was a big encouragement to me, and it's life-changing. And so I think that's been one of the biggest spiritual growths for me, and it's what ultimately going to Camp Adventure, a camp they put on, is what made me decide to go down the ministry route itself. And so I think it's a pretty amazing program. So if you've got any kids that want to go into it or are thinking about ministry, going to Camp Adventure or going to AIM, I think, is an awesome thing to do. So yeah, AIM is a great program.
What does the letters AIM, what do those mean?
That's a good question. It's Adventures in Missions. Is the Adventures in Missions. So the whole idea of it is you're kind of going on an adventure with God.
And it's been an adventure.
It has been an adventure. There's been, I think the most amazing part of it is they put you in this place where it's like you have no time. You have all these studies, you have all these biblical things going on, and the idea that the instructors are wanting you to do, they're going to put you out here. You're going to have to either sink or float, and they're wanting to see if you can put God in the center while you are going through all of the distress. We drove all the way from Lubbock to Albany, New York, and we're doing homework on the way, and so. Yeah, that's a 16-day trip. There's just so many things where it's like they're trying to see if you're going to be able to put God first. And if you do that, and you push through that, and they see that you're putting that effort in, you will make it through. And the growth that you will have is exponential. So it's an amazing program, and that's what it stands for: Adventures in Missions. And so you're basically going on an adventure with God. That's a good question, and there's some of that I can't answer as far as like technical term as to what the economy is, but as far as the economy itself, that again, they were under communism, and so they're coming out of that, and I'm glad you asked that question because that brings into another cultural aspect. Strange things like no one technically owns property. So the government took ownership of all the property. If you said anything against that, you were killed, and so a lot of the properties were taken. It was snatched out from underneath people, and it was the government's property. And so there was no say-so into that. Things like, you got what you got. You were given a certain amount from the government. You might have been given some rations and things of that nature. Coming out of that, right, to answer your question, coming out of that, there's still some things like today, no one really owns property. It's a question as to who owns it. And so there could be somebody that says, oh, this property is really mine, and the government has no way of accumulating that unless there's documents, which are in filing cabinets somewhere, someplace, and they have to find that. There's been companies that have come in, and they've tried they've come in and said, oh, invest in us, and we will, you can have a fortune in us, and they invest in that because they don't know anything else. They have no idea of economy. And there's been some huge economic collapses. And so it's really, as far as what the economy is, I don't know how to answer that in a technical term, but it's a very interesting thing. If you could look into it, it's a very interesting read.
How does their currency stack up to like our dollar?
Okay, so right now, as far as like what is the dollar doing, I believe the LEC is a little bit higher than the dollar, which is very strange. It's usually the LEC is way lower, so that fluctuation has been amazing.
LEC is the kind of money they have. They call it
Yes, it's called the LEC. The LEC is interesting because it's the only country in the world that uses it. It's the Albanian LEC, and it's basically. You take 2 zeros away, and that's how much you got in American dollars. And so 2,000 lek is about $20. 5,000 lek is $50. 20,000 lek is $200. 50,000 lek is $500. So when we go to the ATM to pull out our support for that month, you're pulling out, usually for 40, see, 2 zeros, so 5,000, 50,000, 40,000 lek. And that's about $400. And so 5,000, 4,000, 2,000 bills, $2,000 bills.
copies of it. You can show them later.
Yeah, I could show you later. I've got a 20 on me, as we'd call it, but it's a 2,000 lek bill.
How big is the congregation?
The congregation in Barat is a pretty small congregation. A lot of them, most of them are older folk. The reason for that is, and to answer your question, it's about, I'd say about 20 to 30 people that will show up there. And working to get the youth group, one of the major reasons for that there's not really any young people. We have 1 or 2 young people that show up on Sunday morning. And the others, they're kind of around doing school, they're doing things like that. So if there's a major event, they'll show up for it. But as far as going to church every Sunday, it's very difficult to get them to do that. Most of them are preparing to go to college, and they're preparing for a better education. So they'll go off and they'll go to Tirana, and then from Tirana they go to America. And so no one wants to stay in Albania. And I think that's a truth for Europe too. Everybody wants to either come to, most people want to come to America. And so the big thing is we're going to get our education, we're going to get the finances we need, and then we're going off to America. First Tirana, which is kind of the European side of Albania. I feel like that's the major hub. And then from there they go off to America. So that's why it's such a struggle with the youth. But yeah, I'd say about 15 to 20 members on a regular Sunday, usually around 20. And so it's a pretty small congregation. The preacher there, Chimmy, his wife Anila, they preach in Durrës, and then from Durrës they drive an hour or two. They drive about 2 hours from Durrës all the way to Berat. So he preaches Sunday morning in Durrës and then drives 2 hours through the mountains to Berat and preaches there at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And so our service is at 5 p.m., which is a little different than the way it's done here. So you sleep in on Sunday mornings, and then that's what your service is at 5 o'clock. So.
Well, I had originally a bunch of questions,
Mm-hmm.
but you've done a fantastic job of giving us an overview of everything from the standpoint of you going there not knowing anything,
Mm-hmm.
and now have learned a lot. So I'm impressed, and I think we're all very appreciative of the time that you're spending with us and letting us know about this. Very informative, and I'm impressed.
Well, I really appreciate that. And I still got a lot to learn. I'm still learning a lot, but I'm appreciative that God has used me, because of course, I say I'm not worthy, but none of us are worthy for it. Moses wasn't worthy for the calling that God brought him to, but he called Moses to go to Egypt, to go to Pharaoh. And so that's the same with me. And so I'm blessed that God has considered me worthy to be a part of this ministry and to go to that side of the world. And so I'm just answering his call. And so I'm thankful that that's been informative. Hopefully I haven't talked your ear off. I could talk all night on it. There's so many aspects to it, and 14 more months, so there's a lot more to learn. What was that? And I want to thank you so much for the support. It wouldn't have been possible without you guys supporting me and encouraging me through it. Supporting me financially has been a huge blessing, and also just the prayers have been a huge blessing to me. The prayer of a righteous man avails much, and so just keep me in your prayers above everything else. And of course, I really appreciate the financial support. Being able to do what I'm doing wouldn't be possible without you guys. Your blessing, and so I thank you so much for that. I thank you for your support and your encouragement. And that's all I've got for this evening. So, thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to sing a verse, number 584.